So my name is Russ, and this is the CapEx IndustryCast, where every week, Wednesday at 11:30, we go live. And our intention with this content is to always be adding value to our customers. That's why we exist, is to add value to our customers. So we have learned a lot over the last 20 plus years of being in the capital equipment industry, specifically manufacturing. We do a lot of work with automotive companies. We do a lot of work with medical companies. We do a lot of work with companies that are into consumer products. So we like to share the wisdom that we have gathered along the way, not from a position of superiority by any means or any standards there. We just want to share what we know in an effort to help you avoid the same challenges that we've seen play out over and over and over again. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. The 5 common mistakes in capital project management. These things cost companies lots of money. We have seen it time and time again. I've written multiple articles, wrote a little book about these things to try to help people realize that these are totally avoidable. All of these problems are avoidable if we get the appropriate resources behind us. And that's so we kind of talk through the solutions to these problems as we go along. But an idea, a concept that I want to talk about that seems to be a struggle right now is especially with COVID going on, and there's some financial uncertainty in all of our customers, especially in this manufacturing world. What I'm experiencing is a lack of desire to partner. So in the past, our success as a supplier to a customer has been a partnership. That's where the ultimate success is in our relationships and the relationships that we build with our suppliers. But today, as I've seen more and more purchasing involvement, it's less about the relationship, and it comes down to, what is the price, less about the right technical solution, and when are we going to get it. So there's a lot of tension in the market right now, and maybe it's just because of all the tension that's in our world as it exists right now. But companies that focus on having partners win in the long run. The companies that do that will be more successful than those that don't. I can think of many that focus on partnership. Bosch is an example. That's a company that focuses on partnerships with their suppliers, and as a result, they have a long-standing track record of success. Now, I'm sure there's instances where Bosch has gotten or lost sight of that and had challenges in those relationships, or not been focused on a win-win solution for their supplier as well as their needs. But in my experience, Bosch is definitely an example of a company that is forward-thinking and really about relationships. So I want to encourage you, as you are working with your suppliers, to look at them as partners and not as an enemy or someone that you have to battle to get what you want. If that's the relationship that you have with your supplier, then you got the wrong relationship with your supplier. And all of these common mistakes that we're going to talk about will shine through. Okay. All right. So I will move on and get off my soapbox. All right. So CapEx Sales, what we do, this is the only advertisement that I'll provide here, is we represent a company called ATC Automation. We have for many, many years. I've been working with ATC Automation personally for 20 years at this point, and our team has been working with them for many, many years as well. They are the key with this company. 85% of their business is with repeat customers. In the capital equipment world, that says a lot. Now, not every project has been amazing, but we do our best to make sure that the outcome is good. We partner. That's the mission. Partner, successful outcome, and of course that means we have to work together to make that happen. Cincinnati Test Systems, they are the largest leak test company in the world. And I love saying that because when I started with them, they were far from the largest leak test company in the world, but they have grown and just an amazing company with lots of technologies at their fingertips that they can provide, that they've developed or purchased along the way. Duquesne Plastic Joining, they're out of St. Charles, Illinois. They do plastic joining, obviously, that's what it says, but mainly with ultrasonic welding, hot plate welding, vibration welding, ultrasonics, infrared, hot gas, every technology that you can think of, except for maybe a Bic lighter, putting plastics together. So phenomenal company. Symetric is a division of Cincinnati Test Systems. I break them out separately because they are focused on high-speed in-process test and data management. So they are masters at taking data and putting it into a useful format for you to improve your manufacturing processes. And then Keller Technologies out of Fort Mill, South Carolina, focused on industrial air filtration, wet and dry filtration, machining systems, painting systems, any technologies that, or any systems, manufacturing processes that you have that you need to filter. All right, so here is the challenge. So as a manufacturing engineer or as a capital equipment salesperson, I've seen what seems to, like, every situation as it relates to these projects. So as I mentioned, I've done over 200 capital projects in my career. I've been involved with over 500 capital projects in my career, equating to $250 million worth of projects. So I've seen a lot, and the challenges really boil down to these 5 things. So that's what we're going to talk about. So this is also key here is the typical steps for managing capital projects. So let's just talk through them as a reminder. We do the investment justification, right? We got to justify the money that we're going to spend in order to buy the equipment. We create that request for quote. And then we go out and we work with vendors to find the right vendor, ideally the right vendor that's going to provide us the equipment that we need with the funds that we have available and in the time frame that we're looking for. We have a kickoff meeting so that we are all on the same page before we move forward. Then we have regular follow-up. So as a project manager, manufacturing engineer, we want to follow up. Really, really key, right? Stay engaged in the process to ensure success. Pre-installation. So we're going to go validate it, run it off, make sure that it is ready to come into our facility. Then we're going to, after installation, we're going to do some lessons learned. We're going to understand what went right, what went wrong, how can we do better, and what do we need to continue to follow through on in order to ensure that you've got the best possible piece of equipment for manufacturing your product. So that is the traditional capital project. Those are the steps. So we miss it along the way in these 5 areas, specifically around those steps. So number one mistake, period, bar none, is selecting the wrong company to build the equipment. This is so frequently what I see with companies. They will convince themselves that they've got this person that's going to do it for half the price of everyone else. And as a result, it takes them twice as much time and half again as much money to make it happen. All the time I've seen this throughout my career. So these are some common reasons that you end up with the wrong vendor. You have no written request for quote. So there's nothing that formally documents, here's what we want, here's what we expect in this equipment. Therefore, you can receive any number from any person and they can tell you the story that you want to hear, and then but you've got nothing to hold them accountable to. So you want to make sure you've got that written request for quote. If you don't, expect challenges. No clear vendor selection criteria. So who do you want to partner with? No one thinks through that, or oftentimes customers don't think through, who do I want to work with? We do this when we're going to hire somebody. We do this in our own lives, right? When we're going to choose someone to do a project for us, we want to make sure that we identify who it is that we want to work with, what qualities, so where are they going to be located, what experience do they have? So there's specific questions that you need to be asking in order to confirm that this is the right company for this project for your company. Okay, so no documented capital project management process. So companies just wing it. I see this all the time. They just wing it. Oh, wow, we got to go buy this thing and then we're going to bring it in and we're going to install it. Well, ideally that's what happens, but the reality is that is not what happens. So having a disciplined capital project management process will help you. Even if you make a poor vendor selection, it will help you manage that vendor in that process to ensure that you get the best possible results from the equipment that you have purchased. Lack of experience, so purchasing capital equipment. Man, I've seen many companies. I've received, or the companies that I work with have received a purchase order for a budgetary quote. So we provide a budgetary quote and we get a PO. Now, I would say that's amazing salesmanship and everything that goes along with it, but that would be a line of BS. The reality is they're inexperienced and they bought the equipment off of a budgetary quote because they didn't have any experience purchasing equipment. So it's important that if you don't have experience, that you get plugged in. We've got any number of videos here on the CapEx YouTube channel that you can review that talk about the capital equipment purchasing process and how to go about it and how to do it the right way to make sure that you don't get yourself into trouble or end up with equipment that is unusable or that takes an overwhelming amount of time to keep up. So bias based on past relationships. See this all the time where you'll have a relationship with a company and then that engineer will switch companies and then they'll try to bring that vendor in. Well, that vendor may not have experience in that industry. They don't have experience with that particular customer. And as a result, they have some challenges, some clashing of heads. So you've got a champion internally that is fully invested in the supplier, but not yet fully invested in their own company. And sometimes that can be diametrically opposed, right? So you're committed to the supplier, you're unwilling to hold them accountable in delivering the equipment that your company needs because you are obsessed with maintaining that relationship. So relationships are important, they're critical, but at the end of the day, you serve your company and you've got to stay focused on what's best for the company that I work for, as opposed to the supplier that you are purchasing equipment from. Okay, decisions made based on budget or delivery. Man, the most common mistake. I had a customer, this is several years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago. Our competition, it was a big project. It was $8-9 million project. Consisted of 2 lines. Our competition, which was a big global automation manufacturing company, they quoted 18. Oh no, the company needed it in 18 weeks. I'm sorry, okay, 26 weeks. So the company needed it in 26 weeks, and we said, there's no way. I mean, our quote was 42 weeks for that particular equipment based on what we had in backlog and what we felt we could deliver. The 18 weeks came in as some of the key components for that project were going to take 18 weeks to receive. So by the time you receive them, after specifying them, you're going to have little time to get them installed and debugged in the equipment to make a 26-week delivery. So we said, gosh, we want to work with you. The customer wanted to work with us. We wanted to make that work. But we said, no, we can't do it based on all the variables that are in front of us. Of course, as a salesperson, I'm like, no, let's do it. But the reality was that we couldn't do it, and the company made the right decision by saying no. Turned into be a total disaster. That project was not delivered on time and continues to this day to be a problem for that customer. So I don't wish that on them, of course, but the reality is if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And if other companies are saying, hey, based on our experience, especially companies that you trust, if they say, hey, based on our experience, the likelihood of success in delivering in this amount of time is not feasible. Listen to them. They probably have an idea and it'll save you trouble. And then, of course, the budget thing is everyone wants it cheap, and if they didn't budget enough money, they buy it cheap, and as a result of buying cheap, they get cheap, and cheap is most expensive because you have to continue to work on it, gets in your facility, you have to babysit it, all those challenges go along with it. Okay, purchasing allowed to make the decision versus the technical experts. Common problem, right? So purchasing says this is what you're going to get, but they don't have to live with the consequences associated with the decisions that they make. That's a corporate challenge that companies are having to deal with more and more. So as opposed to turning to their technical experts, the engineers that they trust to solve the problems and bring in the new processes and do the work, purchasing's making those decisions. As a result, it's leaving engineers to deal with equipment that is not up to par, that is lacking in the components and the engineering that they need in order for them to succeed. And then we have amateurs making decisions. So you got people that are making decisions for these capital projects that have no business making decisions. They've never made a decision like this before. And so as a result, all these things that I listed above come into play when they're making the decision. So the amateur is easily influenced and persuaded by a sales story or by a story that a company is telling them. So want to encourage you to not act like an amateur. So be a pro and use the tools that are available to you to make these decisions. All right, common mistake number 2, ordering too early. Now, you may think to yourself, how could we possibly order too early? We're always late. But the reality is that the reason that companies do this is most often because Ford, Chrysler, General Motors, Cummins, you name these big companies that have these big projects, they kick off their tier 1, tier 2 suppliers too late. And as a result of that, these companies have to immediately order equipment. And they order equipment, but the design is not yet frozen. So the incomplete product design, they got to change the packaging, they got to make any number of challenges. And so that can be an issue for the equipment that you're building. And nobody likes changes, right? So those problems result in challenges with your vendor, relationship challenges, because your vendor designs it, they build it, and then the product changes require that they redo the tooling, they reconfigure stations, they tear what they've done up and do it over again. And that costs money, that costs hours. And so the resulting price increases can really create some havoc and challenges in the relationship. So keep an eye on that and then try to avoid that, obviously, if possible. But so these changes are more expensive the further you get along, right? So the further you go into a project, the more expensive it's going to be to make the changes that you need. So it takes time to do things right. And so when you're trying to compress, 42 weeks into 26 weeks, then, expect there to be some challenges with the equipment in producing that product when it's all said and done. Common mistake number 3 is poor project management. So managing capital projects is a skill that is developed. I talked about multiple times, my first indoctrination into this, or baptism by fire, if you will, was at Cummins. I was 2 weeks in. They said, Russ, go buy a washer. I had no idea what I was doing. It was $135,000. I was so excited to spend that money because I couldn't even imagine at the time, what is $135,000? And it was a total disaster. I messed it up because I was a poor project manager. I had no experience, no business managing a capital project because they just didn't teach me that at great school, Purdue University. Love it. But they didn't teach me how to manage a capital project. That's kind of a baptism by fire, or you can take some training that we've created to help indoctrinate you into that, or to teach you, maybe indoctrinate isn't the right word, to teach you how to manage capital projects. It is a skill that you develop by time and time again exercising it. So here's the best project managers. I just want to note some of the best skills that they have. So they are organized. So the best project managers are well organized. So they have their ducks in a row, and the inexperienced project manager that is organized almost always outperforms the unorganized, experienced project manager. That is so key. So just keeping things organized, keeping your ducks in a row. Communication, this should be number 1. The number 1 skill to develop as a project manager is communication, because you've got to talk to a lot of people. You got to talk about people internally. You got to talk with people externally. You got to talk with people that are up the food chain in your organization. You got to talk with outside vendors. There is a lot of communication that needs to happen to execute with excellence. So the people that communicate best are the people that succeed. And you gotta get that bad news out there quickly. When there is bad news, you got to share it quickly, because that is the only way that you're going to solve it, is by taking massive action after you've gotten, let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. Okay, discernment. So, you got to be a strong decision maker. Okay, this is what we're going to do moving forward. Don't be wishy-washy. That just creates challenges for your vendors and for the people internally when you are not strong in making your decisions. So use discernment, use people that you can have as a sounding board to help make sure that you make good decisions. But when you come to it, when it's time, make the decision and go. I want to encourage you to do that. Humility. So keep the team motivated and give them credit. It isn't about you. Success as a leader isn't about you dragging people along or pushing from behind. It's really about lifting them up and helping them be successful in their roles. And that's what you as a project manager, you are a leader. You are leading a team. Sure, you don't have much say in the future of your team members other than helping them to succeed. So be humble, stay, and take a humility approach in your leadership. Big picture thinking. Understand that to be successful as a project manager involves that everyone succeeds. So your suppliers, you want them to be successful. Your people internally, you want them to be successful. You want your operators to have input. You want your team leaders to feel like they have a say in the equipment that they're going to have to man and operate on a day-to-day basis. So thinking big picture is keeping all of those people involved and engaged in that process as well. Common mistake number 4, lack of management support. Oh, this one breaks my heart. I've seen this time and time again, and unfortunately, this is when project managers get thrown under the bus. Management gives up on a project or is not supporting a project, and it creates havoc for the project manager who's trying to make this happen internally, almost by a force of will, because he or she are not getting the support that they need to succeed. So from time to time, project managers have to go it alone because management is MIA. So we don't want that, right? The absence of management support makes it very awkward because you have to push. You have to try to get acceptance in the plant, but you need support from operations. Operational support is critical for success in implementing new capital projects, especially new manufacturing processes. Those are extremely critical in getting that operational buy-in and helping them to understand. So very key. Lack of support results in lack of signature. So you got to change. You need support. You need an updated purchase order. If you're not getting the supports you need, then that is going to be delayed. Therefore, your project is going to be delayed. Things are going to be late. So you're going to have a lack of operator support for runoffs. You're going to have a lack of maintenance support for training. You're going to have a lack of parts for debug, which is another common problem that we're going to be talking about here. So keeping management involved is critical. And how I encourage you to do that is to have an executive summary. We talk about that in Capital Project Mastery. The idea of an executive summary is a summary that you're updating every week. I mean, not every week, every month, and you're supplying it to management, keeping them up to speed and engaged in the project, giving them what they need to determine what's the risk, because their responsibility is to manage risk for this. So you got to remind them too, they signed off on it. In order for justifying the return on investment, you need their help. And so this leads to common mistake number 5, a lack of parts for debug and runoff. Time and time again, we are at a runoff and we have 5 parts. And we have to try to verify or validate that this equipment is performing properly, but we don't have enough parts. That is impossible. So the inevitable is going to happen. We're going to have an increased startup problems, right? We're going to stress our organization unnecessarily because we don't have or didn't have the proper time to get this equipment ready. So startup issues go 6 months, 1 year, 2 years after you've delivered the equipment because you're still chasing your tail. You're still trying to troubleshoot the equipment while you're running production. And we all know that that is a recipe for disaster. Unnecessary downtime. So it only stands to reason that the equipment that is not adequately debugged will have downtime issues because you've got to continually be tweaking and adjusting it and making it work. Instead of doing that on the front end, you're doing it on the back end, and back end solutions are almost never permanent. You're going to have a higher scrap rate. So that lack of investment in runoff parts is going to cost your company long term, could potentially cost you your Q1 flag. I've seen that happen before because delivering product on equipment that was not properly debugged because management didn't want to spend the money to buy the components necessary to properly run the equipment off. So yes, it's an indictment on people that don't want to spend money. I get it. But if you want success for your capital projects, set the money aside, make the investment to ensure that that money is put to use in buying components for the debug and runoff process. That is money well spent. You'll get it back 10 times over. So you have higher defect rates. Your PPAP, you pass the PPAP barely, right? But it's gut wrenching, man. Hopefully that let's see here. I got to get back. Where's my screen? There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so often it takes a lot of nail biting, gut wrenching, like I mentioned, but the most struggle through the approval process, and then production begins, and bad parts get shipped. Problems, like I mentioned, Q1, you got a higher defect issue, you got a higher scrap rate, any number of financial implications. So the reality is poor vendor selection, not ordering too early. I know it seems crazy, but ordering before your product is fully designed, it's a bad idea. Understand, oftentimes it has to happen. Poor project management, very common problem. Lack of management support, a lack of parts for debug. Now, I think what's particularly interesting about all of these problems is they are totally avoidable, but it takes discipline, it takes effort, it takes forethought, it takes intentionality to select the right vendor, to make sure that your product is frozen. And that is a commitment for your management to push back on Chrysler, Ford, and the companies that you supply when they want you to do something that is impossible. We never stand up for the reality. We want to pretend like, in order for us to maintain this relationship with Ford, we've got to promise them something that is impossible to deliver. When in reality is we need to start speaking the truth to say, look, we can't do this right by only having this amount of time. So we need your help, Ford, to tell us sooner so that we have an opportunity to succeed in delivering the best possible components to your facilities. Poor project management. There are, I've got capital project mastery. So there are any number of methods that you can use to increase your ability to manage project, get the experience that you need, and work with people internal to your organization that have experience. Leverage that, get a mentor, and do these projects right. Lack of management support. Use that executive summary. Use different tools to keep your management informed as far as what the project progress is, what are the risks, what are the challenges, so that they stay engaged and they understand their responsibility in ensuring the return on investment that they signed off on. And then lack of parts for debug. Help your purchasing team, help your management team understand the cost, the additional expenses associated with not getting the proper components necessary for debugging and running off your lines. Okay, that is it. I don't know if there are any questions. If there are, please let me know. But I do want to tell you what's coming up. Again, we do this every week, every Wednesday. We go live, and we love the opportunity to share and add value for our customers. So we've got some great things coming up. October 14th, my man Jeff McBee is going to be joining from Cincinnati Test Systems. We're going to talk all things TracerMate gas leak test solutions. On October 21st, we're going to talk about the keys to communication in capital components or capital projects. So continuing to dig deep and try to add value based on our experience in managing capital projects. October 28th, we're going to talk about the welding process for large parts, specifically plastic joining of large parts. Paul Cathcart, if you have not met or know Paul Cathcart, his energy is infectious. He's just such a fun guy. So that is going to be a great interview there. So what topics would you like to cover? Please let us know. We want to be sharing and adding value based on the technologies, manufacturing, the ideas, the concepts that are going to help you advance your career. All right, here is the CapEx team. Again, we want to thank you for your business. We do not exist without you, without our customers buying the equipment that we so proudly represent. Mike Dorsey, located in South Carolina. Chris Mullins, he's there in Eastern North Carolina as well as Virginia. I tell you what, Chris is just crushing it these days. And then I'm located in Fort Mill, South Carolina, but I cover Western North Carolina, and I've got some select accounts in the upstate of South Carolina. Thanks so much for joining. Appreciate you and look forward to talking with you next time on IndustryCast. Bye-bye.